is challenging. We are putting ourselves out there to protect communities, and we are part of the community as well. We're not automaton robots that sit outside the community. Officers live in the community, care passionately about them, want to, they go out to protect and serve, and this is what we're seeing. And having 400 officers plus injured is completely unacceptable. It's not justified. And again, there's no excuse for what we're seeing night on night. It's just unjustified.
Police up and down the nation are braced for more than 100 far-right riots, including at the offices of immigration lawyers and hotels housing asylum seekers, as well as 30 counter-events reportedly planned for this evening. Thousands of extra riot police are on standby, but with unrest spread across England, will that be enough? Well, we can talk to Nick Smart, who's the president of the Police Superintendents Association, who's in the studio with us now. Thank you very much indeed for coming in, Nick. So what's your assessment of how prepared the police can be for what might happen this evening?
Thank you. There's intelligence come in that there's going to be a number of potential protests. And obviously, over the last few days, you've seen the notifications around increased public order officers being mustered into regional cohorts so that they can support local forces as and when those protests manifest themselves, and you'll see an increase in policing.
What's the main problem for the police? Is it numbers? Is it the geographical spread of the protests?
I think it's a challenge, isn't it? The logistics of if it's nationwide, we've got a finite number of resources that we have to be able to call upon at any one time. So it's prioritising where they're going to be, making sure that we do have, of the 8,000 officers that have been mobilised to support these public order operations, that they are where they should be. And that's the bottom line. They need to be where they should be.
So, we've obviously talked an awful lot about the kind of online incitement to violence. That must work, though, in the police's favour in terms of gathering intelligence, because you must be able to see some of these messages, even on some of these encrypted apps. There must be intelligence that is helping the police to determine exactly where to send resources.
Yes, technology advances, then our response to technology and how we deal with it advances as well. So people live their lives on social media, people become more and more identifiable. You'll have seen from images at scenes that, cameras are in the air, people upload it, and we're able to identify people from that. And, the message to people who have gathered or will even think about gathering to commit any sort of violent protest tonight is that you are going to be identified, you will be caught, and you will be prosecuted. And we've seen already some sentences started to come down, and rightly they are draconian, and rightly those that go before the courts should be punished and should be imprisoned.
So how important is that to you? Once somebody goes into the prosecution system, what's the relevance to policing of that?
Well, we're working very closely with CPS and to obtain the evidence required to start the prosecution. Obviously, the prosecution goes to court, and then there's the whether it's conviction or not. But that is an ongoing thing, and we've had over 400 arrests. So, detectives up and down the country will be supporting frontline officers with the investigations behind the scenes when people to come into custody, and that's going to go on for some time. Yeah.
And do you think that is the ultimate deterrent?
Well, I think we would appeal to people in the first place not to get involved. There's no need to. These protests are not legitimate. They're not justified, and there's no need for them. It's violence and thuggery, as many other people have talked about. So we would say to people, just don't turn up. There's no need for it. There's people.
Yeah, people aren't going to take notice.
No,
of that,
they're not.
Though, are they?
No,
if
they're
they
not.
really want to go out and cause trouble.
And if they're going to cause trouble, they need to understand that we have the resources, and arrests will be made. And if you're arrested, you can be reassured that you will be in a prison cell at some point.
This notion of two-tier policing, what would your response to that be?
I think that's a debate for an hour long anyway, but very briefly. There's no two-tier policing. Policing protest is a very nuanced area of business. We police according to the threat, harm and risk. So, for example, if you've got two sides having peaceful protest, you will see officers unprotected, allowing people to voice their opinions. It's a democracy, that's what we do. You'll see officers in protective equipment, helmets, everything when it gets violent. And that's, so we've seen peaceful protest in some locations. We've seen one side turn up and just be intent on violence, and it gets a different policing response to when we're facilitating peaceful protest.
Is that response, though, always determined by the police on the ground in that situation? Is it ever determined before the police are actually dispatched?
Well, we are constantly intelligence gathering, which informs our command decisions to put people on the ground in the first place. So we're basing it on intelligence that's coming in. If it's spontaneous, then often it's, officers not in protective equipment are the first ones at the scene to deal with it. But if it's pre-planned, then usually we have some notification of it, some intelligence. We can gather resources, we can put them in the right protective equipment, and we can deal with the threat that's posed in front of us. If people are peacefully protesting about an issue, you wouldn't expect us to turn up in riot gear and wade in and be heavy-handed, because we'd be criticised, and rightly so.
Okay, so that's such a key point, though, isn't it, Nick? And actually quite a few of our listeners have wanted us to talk about this afternoon. The notion that you might, in the Metropolitan Police Force, be told that there's a certain way that the police should be policing a pro-Palestine demonstration that perhaps is very different to the way a police force in, say, Birmingham or Sunderland or Liverpool is advised before they go out to tackle some of this kind of rioting that we've seen.
I'm not a Met officer, so I've never policed a Met, but I think the difference, the uniqueness of the Metropolitan Police is the scale and the volume. If you've got 10, 15,000, people protesting on a march, there's not many places in the other parts of the country that get that volume of individuals. So the Met are uniquely placed to deal with that. And by and large, most people in this country have turned out to do peaceful protests on a number of issues. There's always an element in any protest that want to agitate and want to cause trouble, and that's why we have to have that contingency in our bag, as it were. But more often than not, it's peaceful protest, and we do it face to face. We don't do it in public order kit. We do it in high-vis yellow jackets and helmets and hats and law engagement, as opposed to law enforcement like other countries do.
Do you and your colleagues and members of the Police Superintendents Association feel that they might need more backup in terms of what you're able to use on protest/riot? So water cannon, rubber bullets, that kind of escalation?
Public order. There's a number of public order tactics. Dogs being one, horses being another. Rubber bullets, as you referred to, that is a tactical option if there's potential threats to life. Water cannon. There's been a debate on water cannon, and I've seen that. It is a tactical option. I've been a public order commander for a number of years. It has its pros, it has its cons. It can be quite indiscriminate, and it's quite difficult to get to a point where if people are, you've seen running around trying to, your protest is constantly on the move. It's very rarely static, and for a big machine like that to be moving, it's difficult to, to keep up, as it were. So, but in certain circumstances, it might be appropriate. But however, the main tactic here is human beings, my colleagues on the front line, in their protective equipment, dealing with violence. That's tried and tested, and that's what's there. That's what you see night on night, isn't it? It's individuals trying to stop thuggery.
How are you and your colleagues feeling at the moment?
I think it's a difficult and challenging time for policing. We have a reasonably young and inexperienced workforce, and a lot of them are in these frontline roles and experiencing disorder for the first time. So it is challenging. We are putting ourselves out there to protect communities, and we are part of the community as well. We're not automaton robots that sit outside the community. Officers live in the community, care passionately about them, want to, they go out to protect and serve, and this is what we're seeing. And having 400 officers plus injured is completely unacceptable. It's not justified. And again, there's no excuse for what we're seeing night on night. It's just unjustified.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. That's Nick Smart, who's president of the Police Superintendents Association.